Welcome to the Dogs Podcast with your hosts, Blake Reneker, Justin Charles, and Josh All.
Who says money does not talk? Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Josh All, your host, with you today. Welcome. Happy Free Agency Monday to everybody out there. The new league year starts on Wednesday, but the legal tampering period technically starts, and by the time you guys watch this, started today at noon. Unofficially now, I guess it starts Sunday around, 3 or 4 p.m. That's when we started getting notifications that teams were agreeing to deals with players and all kinds of things. So this stuff has been happening the entire offseason. It's just starting to come to light a little sooner, as it has in years past. But we're going to go through the big news from yesterday. And yes, it's Myles Garrett signing the extension with the Browns. The whole drama situation with him, at least the trade request drama, is finally over. So we'll break it all down now. I might be kind of silly doing this episode. Let's see, when I'm recording it, this is prior to noon on Monday morning, and I know there's going to be so much free agency news today, but I primarily want to focus today on the Myles Garrett contract, that whole situation, then just a couple other notes from the weekend. We will handle all of the free agency signings and react to all that stuff later in the week. And we'll obviously be posting about it all over social media as the week unfolds. But today, let's dive into this Myles Garrett contract extension. And before I do, though, make sure you guys like this video on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you don't miss anything new. Again, we're going to be posting so much throughout this, this off season leading into the summer and everything. So you just don't want to miss anything new. And of course, as always, if you guys want to join the Dog Pack community, get in to the private Discord and hang out with all of the diehard Browns fans that we have in that community. It's jointhedogs.com to become an official Dog Pack member. Okay, so when things were first reported yesterday, came out, Myles Garrett had signed a brand new 4-year extension with the Cleveland Browns worth it included $123 million guaranteed, and it was valued at $40 million per year annual average salary. So that is now the highest paid. Myles Garrett for the Cleveland Browns is now the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history for about a couple days, maybe not even 24 hours. We'll see what happens today. But it's just interesting to me and worth noting that it's the Browns, the Cleveland Browns, your team, my team, not some other team in the NFL, just made a player the highest paid non-quarterback in the NFL. And for me, that's worth noting because this isn't news we would be breaking in years past. The Browns didn't pay people like this. The Browns didn't have people worth paying like this. And I just think it's a testament to, I understand that last year did not go the way we wanted it to go. It has not been, we have not strung consecutive winning seasons together in a while or anything like that. But this team still is different than what we have experienced over the last, 25, 30 years of our lives, because we actually have good talent on this roster. We just need to start putting all the missing pieces together and get away from the crap we were doing last year. Myles Garrett, it just shows that the Browns took a guy, number 1 overall. He's elite. He has become elite. He's on a Hall of Fame trajectory and is now the highest paid non-quarterback in the league for the Cleveland Browns. Not for some other team, but for us. So I just think that is worth noting. And honestly, it's pretty cool. And it's pretty cool that we're able to do that, which I'll get into a little bit later. So Jack Duffin from OBR posted that Myles Garrett had 2 years left on his contract. So if you take the 2 years he had left plus the new 4-year extension, he's at about $34 million per year over the next 6. He's got 4 years guaranteed, and then the team has options, or then there's 2 team options in 2029 and 2030. And this all but guarantees, unless he decides to play until he's 36, 37 years old, Myles Garrett will most likely, I don't want to say certainly, but most likely is going to retire as a Cleveland Brown. So the whole Andrew Berry said, we want him to go from Cleveland to Canton. And Myles said, screw Cleveland to Canton. I want to go from Cleveland to a contender to Canton. Well, now he's Cleveland to Canton. That's just kind of, and we kind of figured that's how this was going to go all along. So there was another post, full detail breakdown of the contract extension from Albert Breer, 4-year, $160 million extension, $88.8 million fully guaranteed, $123.5 with the injury guarantees. $100 million will be earned over 2025, 2026. He has a no trade clause, which I know a lot of people were making a big deal about that online. Maybe because he was just requesting a trade, but the no trade clause pretty much now gives him power later in his career that he can dictate where he goes if this situation were to arise again, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Myles had $45 million remaining over the final 2 years of his contract, so he is getting $55 million in new money for the first year. So Myles Garrett locked up in Cleveland until the year 2030. So we have got our elite Hall of Fame caliber edge rusher locked into the defensive line. It's a position that we thought, man, if we lose Myles Garrett, this defense is going to suffer mightily because we really don't have anybody else on the roster currently who can rush the passer even 50% as well as he does. And he's the best in the league at it. We've talked about that a ton of times. Don't have to worry about it anymore. He is here. So it was interesting. The article came out yesterday from, I believe it's Cleveland.com. Mary Kay Cabot said that Myles Garrett's agent, Nicole Lynn of Clutch Sports, reached out, released a statement, said, Andrew Berry and I have spent the last 36 hours getting the deal done. Basically, Myles had a change of heart, and he's excited to go from Cleveland to Canton and chase a championship in Ohio. When he made that decision, he said, I want to get this done before free agency so I can start recruiting free agents so I can help the team. And she said, all right, we have 24 hours to get this done, and we did it. Okay, so it's done. We got the deal done. Myles Garrett locked into Cleveland, all that stuff. What was the change of heart? That's my question. And we'll obviously talk more about this later in the week. Excuse me. We'll get Blake and Justin's thoughts on everything. Maybe Kenny as well. But what was the change of heart? To me, it just reaffirms, we've already said the Browns are taking quarterback at 2, and this just reaffirms that, yeah, they're absolutely taking quarterback at 2, and it's still getting floated out there by a lot of Cleveland media, so it's worth mentioning because we've talked about it too. Maybe even moving up to 1 to take the guy that they're sold on. I don't believe that Andrew Berry sold Myles Garrett on long-term success potential in Cleveland based on any veteran quarterback who's, 35 years or older, or Daniel Jones, or any of these guys. I don't think that was the selling point because the options in free agency this year really aren't even all that great, to be honest. I believe they know who they want in the draft, and they told Myles who they want in the draft and why they believe that can be their guy, and I think he got on board. The money helps, of course. Obviously, now we talked about Geno Smith. He has been floated as an option for the Browns, potentially trading for him this offseason. He just got moved to the Raiders. So Seattle has already made the move with Geno Smith. He is off the board. Aaron Rodgers has been floated as an option, but now he's being mostly tied to, in the reports, the New York Giants, Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe the Seahawks. By the time you watch this, he might have already signed somewhere. I don't know. Kirk Cousins obviously is an option that the Browns have talked a lot about or has been linked to the Browns by a lot of analysts, but the Falcons seem pretty intent based on their comments that they do actually intend to keep him as a backup. I saw it broken down. They can either pay him $100 million over 2 years to keep him as the backup, or they can just eat $90 million of sunk cost if they decide to cut him. So why cut him? I mean, it's $10 million more to keep him as your backup, and at least you have a plan if anything were to happen to Michael Penix. So the Kirk Cousins thing, the odds of him coming to Cleveland are starting to really fall, in my opinion. So a rookie quarterback really seems to be 100% the plan for this team's future. And why even discuss what the change of heart was? I know a lot of people out there, you guys are just screaming, $40 million was the change of heart. Yeah, it was the money. It was the money. You just threw a bunch of money at him, and that's what changed his mind. You got to remember, though, that's not necessarily the case. Now, of course, the money is important. The money is the primary driving factor in all these decisions. But last week at the Combine, Mary Kay Cabot was reporting that Andrew Berry was talking about, hey, we're more likely to sign him to a $40 million extension than actually trade him. And Garrett and his agent came out, pretty much right away. I think it was like the next morning and said, there will be no contract extension discussions. We're not doing that. We're standing firm in the trade request. So they have already turned their nose up at the $40 million a year. Now, whether that was, a ploy to give the illusion that he's not overly concerned about money when actually he is, I don't know. I don't want to speculate down that path. All I know is the $40 million per year, highest paid non-quarterback in the league, has already been floated and already been pretty much scoffed at. Like, nah, that's not what we're worried about here. So to me, for him to then circle back and say, okay, the $40 million is cool. That's what I want. Let's take it. There had to be something else to go along with it. Maybe it was just the no trade clause. Hell, I don't know. But my thought is that there is a little bit different of a plan right now than there was maybe 2 or whatever months ago whenever he first came out and said, yeah, I want out. We'll see. Again, by the time you guys watch this and check out this video, we'll probably have more information about what the Browns are doing in free agency anyway. We're about a half hour away my time. So by the time this gets out, who knows? Again, I don't expect the Browns to be huge players in free agency this week, but I do expect them to be exploring trades. And I think it's worth mentioning the Brandon Ayuk trade rumors have resurfaced. Apparently, Jared Muller from Dogs by Nature reported that there has already been discussions about Greg Newsome plus, some semblance of day 3 picks going to San Francisco with Brandon Ayuk and knowing Andrew Berry, probably some sort of pick coming back to the Browns in a trade. And I know, he just got paid, his big contract last year. The cap hits are like $16 million this year. Or maybe it was 10 million and 16 next year. I forget, but they're manageable. I looked into them and I thought, okay, it's not out of the realm of possibility that the Browns could trade for and still pay Brandon Ayuk. Remember, Andrew Berry's traded for a receiver the last 3 years. It was Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy. He wanted Jerry Jeudy the year before. He actually got him in 23, and then in 24, Andrew Berry got him, and he got him for way less than what the asking price was the year before. Last year, the asking price for Brandon Ayuk was enormous. This year, I think there's more of a sense from San Francisco they're done with him. I don't think they really want him there. And it could be a bargain for the Browns. So we'll see what happens. It's stuff like that. We've talked about Michael Mayer, tight end from the Raiders. Would love to see the Browns get him. There's things outside of free agency that could still make a huge impact to this roster that I do expect to see and I am looking for to happen this week. So some of the other concerns that I've seen online, and I want to address it because I think it's fair. I think it's valid. I've seen people talking about how now that is both Deshaun Watson and now Myles Garrett, 2 players who both expressed a desire not wanting to play in Cleveland and then both agreed to play in Cleveland once they were offered historically large contracts. So is this another situation of, the Browns just threw a bunch of money at a guy who doesn't even really want to be here, and now he's not going to really give a crap. He's not going to play hard. Like, it's just going to be, it's all downhill from here. And I get those concerns, guys. I totally do. The difference for me, though, Myles Garrett's on a Hall of Fame career arc. Said for weeks that this whole I'm going to sit out if I don't get traded thing, I never really bought that because he'd be a moron to do it because he would be willingly, actively jeopardizing his Hall of Fame trajectory. You don't want to ruin that resume, especially when you're 30. You're 30 years old. It's not like he's 25 saying, well, I'm going to sit out. And he can afford that because he's got potentially another healthy decade left of football if, all things go well. No, he is at the tail end of what I would say the prime window. And even whenever he gets out of his prime, he's still going to be very good, which is why this deal is fine for the Browns, especially with the last 2 years being club options, and they could move him or cut him, I guess, if they needed to. But with the way Andrew Berry manages the cap and everything, there's going to be restructures and money's going to be pushed out, and there will be more flexibility in the future with this whole thing. So I'm not worried about Myles being a guy who's going to take the money and then just kind of loaf it. We saw this with David Njoku. David Njoku's the third guy not mentioned with these other 2 names right now that he wanted to trade. He wanted out of Cleveland. and had a sit-down meeting with Andrew Barry in the front office, probably Stefanski and these guys, and came out and boom, switch flipped, and all into Cleveland. He was made one of the highest paid tight ends at the time. I remember this was a few years back now, and people were, oh my gosh, this is way too much money for David Njoku. And it's turned out to be a good deal because guys have gotten paid a lot more than him since then for similar or, sometimes less production. So these things, it's always a risk when you're paying a guy this kind of money for future services, because you don't pay him for his past services. You're paying a guy I'm paying you $40 million a year for the next 4 years, 6 years, whatever it is. So I'm expecting production in those years. You're not guaranteed to get it, but that's how the world works. That's how sports works. That's how this league works. You take the risk and you hope it pays off. And with Myles, I think it will, but I think that there was a couple other things going into this again. I think he realized that he had no leverage in this situation. Jack Duffin was posting about this, and I thought, we've talked about this for weeks too. He really had no leverage. He had two options essentially, with the Browns saying, like, we're not trading you. And the Browns could not trade him. We talked about this so much. It was a $36 million dead cap hit in 25 and $24 million next year in 26. Can't do it. Cannot take on those dead cap hits. So they were not trading him, at least not before June 1st. So this whole thing was kind of ridiculous. So that the only two options that he had, he could play or not play, hang out in Cleveland for his final 2 seasons under contract. And then Cleveland could tag him for 2 years in a row because they've never franchise tagged him, obviously. So they could do it twice. And then, oh, hey, there you go. There's 4 more years in Cleveland. Now you're a free agent in 2029 when you're like 34 or 35 years old. Well, obviously that's not an option. You don't want that. Your second option, you could sign the largest non-quarterback contract in NFL history. So that's the one he opted for. And, it's good. It's good for Browns fans. It's good for the team to have, obviously, Myles Garrett on that defensive line. So that's over and done with. Now we just get to see, is he going to walk back his Cleveland's not a contender, media tour that he was on? We'll see if we get any sorts of apologies. But, I know Blake yesterday, we were texting and he said, hey, water under the bridge. He's signed. Who cares? Let's go. Let's just go out there and try to get some wins. I'm with you 100%. For me, I'm the type of fan. It's like, it would be nice to hear him say, hey, I kind of regret my actions or, my statements here in the past few weeks. I'm totally bought into Cleveland. Let's get out there. I'm dedicated to making this team a winner. Yada, yada, yada. Just put some bullshit together. I honestly don't even care. But at the end of the day, I'll be rooting for him. I'm happy he's here. And that was a pretty big news drop yesterday, right before free agency hit. Hey, Browns fans, we just want to remind you guys, go check out the Living for We podcast. Living for We, keep your head up, addresses the troubles of gun violence and offers solutions for those who want to better their community. You'll hear from Amir and Drew, 2 black men who picked up a gun as kids because they felt they had no other choice. Andre Taylor, a community leader stepping into schools to break the cycle. Walter Patton, founder of Ghetto Therapy, bringing mental health support straight into the neighborhood. These are real stories, real struggles, and real solutions. Living for We is an award-winning podcast from Idea Stream Public Media, part of the Connecting the Dots Between Race and Health initiative. This season, host Maureen Harris-Taylor and her new co-host Maisha Watkins, executive director of the Cleveland Peacemakers, bring you stories from the front lines, victims, survivors, and those fighting for change. New episodes drop every Tuesday, and they started last month on February 11th. Listen to Living for We wherever you get your podcast, or watch the video version on IdeaStream's YouTube channel. Learn more at ideastream.com/podcast/living-for-we.
Men, if you've lost your hair, it doesn't mean you can't find it again. Try Hims Hair Loss Solutions and you'll be joining hundreds of thousands of subscribers who found their hair again. It can be hard for men to deal with hair loss, even though it is common. Luckily, I'm here to provide you with a solution so you don't even have to talk about it. Through Hims, you can restore your hair by accessing their personalized hair loss solutions. Men value many different things about their appearance. But if you're a guy who really cares about your hair and find that it's slowly going away, you might be feeling discouraged when you look in the mirror. And that's where Hims comes in. Check out their personalized hair loss solutions, and you can start seeing your hair grow back in as little as 3 to 6 months. Hims provides you with convenient access to a range of hair loss treatments that work. all from the comfort of your couch. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted options and clinically proven ingredients, like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. Choose from personalized chewable, oral, spray, and serum treatments to find what works best for you. The process is simple and 100% online, so there are no uncomfortable doctor visits. Answer a few questions and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to you for free. No insurance is needed and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. Hims has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers. And they can help you get your confidence back too with visibly thicker and fuller hair. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/Hail Mary. That's HIMS.com/Hail Mary for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/Hail Mary. Results may vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil and finasteride. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information.
Your old or broken phone can let you down when you need it most.
Perfect.
But at Verizon, trade in any old phone from our top brands and get the most for it, up to $2,000 in value, for an amazing new iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence and a new line on My Plan, and iPad and Apple Watch Series 10. That's like a 3-for-1. And you can get it on any plan. At Verizon, trade in your old phone for a brand new iPhone 16 Pro, iPad, and Apple Watch. The other guys won't give you that. Visit Verizon.com today. Additional terms apply. Service plan required for Apple Watch and iPad. Up to $2,000 value based on iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch.
So another thing that this leads me into then is I want to talk about Jimmy Haslam and Andrew Berry. These guys get so much hate online, so much hate on social media. People, Jimmy Haslam's the worst owner in all of sports. Andrew Berry is the worst GM in the NFL, yada, yada, yada. And this is what I'm going to say about Jimmy Haslam, Andrew Berry, and the Browns front office. These guys are not perfect. Nobody is. These guys have made some mistakes. Everybody has. These guys are going to make mistakes in the future. Everybody will. Now, I understand that the big mistake that everybody wants to point at and heap all this hatred on top of was the Deshaun Watson trade, the contract, all that stuff. But the rhetoric around the Deshaun Watson contract, ever since we signed him, has been that will destroy the Browns team for a decade. They won't be able to sign any players. They're going to have to trade everybody, and this team is essentially going to be dismantled. And none of that has ever come to fruition. That is absolutely not true. The way that Andrew Berry in the front office manages the cap, say what you want about his draft selection, say what you want about that stuff, that you cannot deny that aside from the Deshaun Watson trade, he gets great value in his trades, and the trades usually pan out pretty well for the Browns. He knows how to extend and retain players, and he can manage the salary cap in a way that allows them to do so. By moving money into other years in the future allows you to keep more of your good players, or in the Browns case, literally all of your good players that you want to keep, you can keep right now. And we talked to Jack Duffin last summer. I mention this all the time, but he explained how this salary cap model is completely 100% sustainable year after year after year, as long as the entire organization has bought into it and you don't waver from it. And the other thing, the main driving force that makes this engine go, that makes everything possible, is having an owner who's willing to spend the cash to make it happen. Without that, none of this works. So say what you want about Jimmy Haslam being a bad, meddling owner, all this stuff about, Jimmy sucks, whatever. I'll take him every day of the week over the Bengals. I don't want a cheap owner. Jimmy Haslam has shown, first of all, he's willing to throw $230 million guarantee of his own money. Remember, his money that cash has to be set aside in escrow, boom, when the contract is signed for Deshaun Watson back in 2022. So Jimmy said, well, here's $230 million, set it aside for this guy. That's how committed he is to trying to make this team a winner. Now, that move was a flop. That was a big waste of money. But you know what? He still made the commitment. He's made the commitment to spend billions of dollars to build a brand new state-of-the-art dome facility in Cleveland, develop the surrounding Brook Park area to make it an attraction for the city of Cleveland, for the suburbs there and everything, and just really revitalize the Northeast Ohio landscape. And not every owner is willing to do that, guys. Not every owner first of all, has the money, or two, is willing to spend that money to make those things happen. And the big example, obviously, is the Cincinnati Bengals. You look at the situation that they're in with their players. The Browns have one of the highest paid quarterback contracts in the league with Deshaun Watson. He's not even playing for us. And yet we can still sign a guy like Myles Garrett to the highest non-quarterback contract in NFL history. And we have all these other moves, and I'll go through some of them. But the Bengals, they have one of the highest paid quarterback contracts in the league with Joe Burrow. They can't re-sign Trey Hendrickson, one of the best pass rushers. They're trying to trade him. They can't re-sign T. Higgins, one of the better receivers in the league. They have to keep franchise tagging him. And I honestly would be surprised if they even do come to a long-term deal with him this year. They still have to try to find a way to sign Jamar Chase, which is hilarious because they said earlier this offseason they plan to make him the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. And before yesterday, that number was $35 million a year for Justin Jefferson, got that contract last year. So yeah, they could have signed him for 36, 37, made him the new highest paid. Now you got to go over 40 to get it done because we just did it with Myles Garrett. The Cowboys have to sign Micah Parsons yet. Well, now we just set the market for what a top-tier pass rusher is going for. You think Micah's going to sign for anything significantly less than 40 a year? I don't think so. We've got Steelers fans and accounts tweeting about whether or not the Steelers should cash in on the value of TJ Watt and trade him right now while the value of these edge rushers is so high. So the Browns are, again, they do a lot of things wrong. They do a lot of things that don't end up working. But one thing that they are consistently doing is setting the market at these different price points for different positions. And love them or hate them for it, it works because now you strap other teams in uncomfortable situations when it comes to contract negotiations with those players. The Bengals, think about them. Last year, Jamar Chase sat out in training camp, didn't want to report because he wanted the new contract extension last year. And it was like, okay, you're a year too early for this stuff. We're not signing you right now. And last year, I think that number was around, if I'm remembering what I saw correctly, it was like 32 or something like that. Around $32 million a year is what they could have extended him for. Hell, it might have even been less than that. And if they would have signed that deal with him last year and got the extension done, that's the number he would have been at. Instead, they played hardball, they played cheap ball, didn't want to negotiate and do the contract last year. And now this year, they have to get the extension done. But now that number is not, 28, 29, 30, whatever it was last year. Now it's 40 plus. So I got to give credit to the Browns for the way they handle these contracts, because you're looking at a Bengals team that if they can't figure things out with Jamar Chase, all of a sudden you went from a team that had your top four players was, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Trey Hendrickson, to it's just Joe Burrow. And while the Browns have not had the success that we're wanting to see them have necessarily on the field, as far as the roster goes and the players that we're keeping, this front office is great at what they do. They're so forward thinking because we've got the high paid quarterback just like the Bengals do. And that guy, like I said, doesn't even play for us. Hasn't really played for us and doesn't play for us anymore, but he's still on the books. And what have the Browns been able to do since we signed and paid Deshaun Watson back in 2022? Since then, well, most recently, we made Myles Garrett the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. We traded for Amari Cooper. We traded for Elijah Moore. We traded for and extended Jerry Jeudy, a contract that's looking hella nice right now. We traded for and re-signed Zadarius Smith. We extended Jack Conklin. We extended and kept David Njoku. We extended and kept Denzel Ward. We extended and kept Grant Delpit. We extended and kept J.O.K. We extended and kept Dustin Hopkins. Those are all players we were able to extend and keep on the roster after we paid Deshaun Watson. Not before, after. Let's see. We exercised the fifth-year option on Jed Wills. We exercised the fifth-year option on Greg Newsome. We signed Dalvin Tomlinson, Juan Thornhill, Obo Okoronkwo, Shelby Harris, re-signed Ethan Posick, re-signed Jadeveon Clowney. Now, obviously, not all those picks are home runs or anything like that, but that's not how the NFL works. It just speaks to when the Browns have players that they want. Either they want to go get in free agency, or they already have on the team and they want to re-sign, or they want to extend and keep on the roster. They've been able to do it. Name me one player that we have lost because of Deshaun Watson's contract on the books. Name me one player. I know somebody out there saying Nick Chubb. This was going to happen with Nick Chubb, whether we had Deshaun Watson or any of these other guys on the roster or not. He's a 30-year-old, going to be a 30-year-old running back. That's a position of minimal value on most NFL rosters, coming off 2 season-ending injuries. This was always going to be the case. So that is not tied to the Deshaun Watson situation. So you got to give the ownership and the front office some credit when it comes to these things, especially when you compare to a team like the Bengals, who, man, that fan base is one that if you go online and you look through social media, they're not too pleased right now with the way their front office has handled the roster. So just a couple other quick notes before I wrap this thing up. And I'll kind of check Twitter here in a minute to see if I can, first of all, get it to refresh, because for some reason it's not working very well here this morning. What a great day for Twitter to not be running well. To see if there's any news and updates about the Browns here. But just a couple notable things from yesterday. Davante Adams signed intends to sign with the Los Angeles Rams. So Aaron Rodgers obviously will not be going to Los Angeles because they just re-signed Matthew Stafford to a big deal. So it will be Davante Adams playing with Puka Nacua and Matthew Stafford out in LA. So Rodgers will not be teaming up with his buddy Davante Adams this season. And the big one, the Seattle Seahawks have traded DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a second-round pick. So DK Metcalf is now in the AFC North. That puts Metcalf and Pickens both on the roster for Pittsburgh, and I think that's going to be very entertaining this year. These are two guys with big personalities. We already know that Pickens has a pretty bad attitude, and there's not even a guarantee from what I'm seeing that he ends up staying on the team. He could end up being moved here before the draft. So we'll see what ends up happening with George Pickens. But to put him and DK Metcalf on the same roster, you are just tempting things to go poorly. And it's exciting to watch the Steelers do their things because they don't have a quarterback either. But they're not in the position to get the type of quarterback that the Browns are, with the number 2 overall pick and potentially the option to trade into number 1. Which is still on the table. We'll see what ends up happening. What Tennessee does this week in free agency will tell us a lot about their intentions with the number 1 overall pick. And we'll see what Cleveland does as far as signing, players out of that veteran quarterback market. That'll tell us a little bit too. Okay, well, I guess that's it for today. I just refreshed Twitter and something went wrong. Try reloading. Well, not working. So whatever. That's my main news source. Again, it's still prior to noon on Monday, so the big free agency frenzy is not really kicking off as of yet. We will be back later this week to break down everything that's going on. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the socials at The Dogs Podcast to keep up with all the updates. We'll be giving our thoughts and opinions on everything the Browns do, don't do. Some of these other teams we were talking about, the Steelers last night whenever they traded for Pickens, because that impacts the Browns. Now trading for Metcalf. We got to face him now twice a year, so... Oh, and Pittsburgh intends to give him a 5-year, $150 million extension once that trade goes through and he becomes a Pittsburgh Steeler. So DK Metcalf is in the AFC North for a while. So Martin Emerson, get your big boy pants back on. You're going to have to go toe-to-toe with this guy the way you did Mike Evans a few years ago. But anyway, that kind of wraps everything up here. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Your reactions to the Myles Garrett extension. Was this Browns being desperate and just throwing money at a problem, or was this the plan all along? Is it a great move? Are you happy that the future Hall of Famer is locked up in Cleveland, most likely for the rest of his career, unless, again, like I said, things go downhill or he decides to play super late into his career and ends up bouncing around a couple teams late in the late stages. But for all intents and purposes, the predominant prime Hall of Fame seasons for Myles Garrett will be played in Cleveland on the Browns defensive line. He is locked up and things are looking much better than they were a week ago. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate you so much. And until I see you guys in the next one, let's go Browns.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Dogs Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at the Dogs Podcast. Get your thoughts on the show at thedogspodcast.com.
This episode is brought to you by Danger Coffee. Browns fans, we talk about how Danger Coffee is made free from mold toxins that are in 45% of the world's coffee, but that's not all that Danger Coffee has to offer. Mineral and nutrient deficiencies are a big deal. They make you feel sick, tired, stressed, and they can give you brain fog. These deficiencies negatively affect your immune system, your digestion, sleep, metabolism. Have you ever wondered why you get an initial burst from your coffee, but then you get that little crash not long after? Danger Coffee's patent-pending process remineralizes your body with more than 50 trace minerals and electrolytes, leaving you more energized, engaged, powerful. These micronutrients enter the cells to boost performance. They bind to toxins to provide detoxification support. I know that sounds like a lot, but the bottom line, guys, is minerals matter, and most of us really don't get enough of them on a daily basis. Danger Coffee delivers micronutrients, plus it gives you access to the minerals you already have. Head to dangercoffee.com, use our code DOGS, DAWGS, for 10% off your order, and that code can be used over and over, so you get 10% off every order you make using code DOGS. It's time to start every day off with a cup of coffee that gets you going and actually keeps you going. dangercoffee.com, code DOGS.
Your old or broken phone can let you down when you need it most.
Perfect.
But at Verizon, trade in any old phone from our top brands and get the most for it, up to $2,000 in value, for an amazing new iPhone 16 Pro with Apple Intelligence and a new line on My Plan, and iPad and Apple Watch Series 10. That's like a 3-for-1. And you can get it on any plan. At Verizon, trade in your old phone for a brand new iPhone 16 Pro, iPad, and Apple Watch. The other guys won't give you that. Visit Verizon.com today. Additional terms apply. Service plan required for Apple Watch and iPad. Up to $2,000 value based on iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch.